Hello. Today I'm going to talk to you about competitive advantage, what your personal competitive advantage is, why it's important to help you navigate changes in your life more easily, and how you can determine what your competitive advantage is. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Patricia Brooks, and I've been living in the south of France since 2018. And now I help people who are ready to start the next chapters of their lives living and thriving in a foreign country. Build the skills and tools and mindset that will help them not only make their move abroad, but settle in nicely, settle in with more ease. And on this channel, I talk about my life in France, about moving abroad, and how to dig down deep and find the confidence and courage to do the things that matter most to you in life. And today I'm going to be talking about competitive advantage. Now, this might be a term you heard in business. I first heard it when I went to business school, but we all have our own personal competitive advantage. And when we recognize what that is, when we are aware of that, we can use it to our benefit. It can help us to navigate life's challenges, life's changes, and really help smooth things out. And the reason I'm talking about this today is that I recently realized a competitive advantage that I have. And it was highlighted when I attended a Project Management Institute France conference earlier this month. And one of the keynote speakers, Valérie Marie, who is a pianist and a speaker, a conference speaker, she spoke about this. I did a video a couple of weeks ago where I talked about the 5 key takeaways I got from that conference, and you can check out that video. I'll put a link to that in the description. A viewer thought, oh, well, I like this concept of competitive advantage, personal competitive advantage, but how do we know what our competitive advantage is? And it was a really good question, and I thought it would make a great topic for a video. So here I am. So what exactly is a competitive advantage? Competitive advantage is something that gives you the upper hand over somebody else or over another company. In business, a competitive advantage can be if you are first to market with a certain product. That might give you the competitive advantage because consumers might see you as the leader. A competitive advantage might be a brand and how that brand is seen. But personally, what is a competitive advantage? Well, the competitive advantage that I alluded to earlier, that is something that I hadn't leveraged or hadn't realized, was the fact that organizing, and project management is a strength for me. It's something that's pretty innate within me. And then for 20 years, I worked in corporate as a project manager. So I built on my organizational ability. I gained some skills and tools and knowledge. And now that is something that I'm really good at. It actually helped me make my move abroad. And I didn't really realize that that was working in the background and that was aiding me in dealing with uncertainty. I didn't know how to move abroad, but I knew how to stand up a project and execute on that. And so that's what I did. But I wasn't leveraging my project management as a competitive advantage when I started my business. Now, 2.5 years into my life in France, I decided that it was time for me to come off of my career break and start earning some money. And so I decided I was going to have a coaching practice. My signature program is helping single women who are making a move abroad and have some fears and doubts about that and don't want to make the move all by themselves or feel like they're doing it all by themselves. And so I have this group that helps them do that. And in my marketing and when I would talk to people who might be interested in that program, I didn't highlight the fact that, moving abroad is a project and I am a highly qualified project manager who actually did this thing herself. It's a selling point. And 4 or 5 months ago, I recognized that, moving abroad is a project. And oh, you know what? I'm good at projects. You need to hire me. So that is one of my personal competitive advantages. It helped me make a move abroad, but it's also a competitive advantage that I use in business now. And being aware of that, now I can use that to my benefit. So that's what a competitive advantage is. Now, you might be thinking, well, I'm not really sure that I even have a competitive advantage. I have done this one thing for 20 or 30 years, and I don't see it as being advantageous. And how can I know if I have a competitive advantage and what that advantage is? So I'm going to break down 5 ways that you can determine that. So the first way that you can determine what your competitive advantage is look to the things that you are passionate about. And you probably want to write down all the things that you could get so absorbed in that a day could go by and it would feel like time had stood still. And write all of those things down. List all of those things. And then in a column next to that, you might put a star next to those things that you are good at, right? Because you might be able to do something and enjoy it, but maybe you're not that good at it. And the reason that I say to do that is if you are considering starting a business around your passion, being good at it is important. But if it's something that you enjoy, that maybe helps you to relax, maybe helps you tap into your intuition or make you feel happier, that can be a competitive advantage, because if you're happier, then you're going to move through life with a little bit more ease. Okay. So list all the things you're passionate about and then put a star next to those things that you're good at, because those things that you're good at and that you're passionate about, there may be a market for that. And a lot of times people say, oh, well, you can't make money doing what you love doing. And I challenge that. I don't believe that that is true. And I'm going to give you an example a little later on. So that's the first way. List your passions. The second way is to take assessments. There are assessments out there that will help you to identify what skills you are strong at. There's the Strength Finder assessment, but there are others out there. And as you take those assessments, answer those questions, you might start to see, oh yeah, I am good at this thing here. And then you can list those things out. You can look at what you are working toward, what goal you've set for yourself. Maybe it's making a move abroad. And then you can say, okay, I'm moving abroad and I am really good at doing research. Well, how might that help me to make my move abroad? Or maybe you are extroverted and aren't shy or aren't afraid to stand out or be different or maybe even make a mistake. How could that help you make your move abroad or integrate more easily? Okay. For me, one of the things now that I think is a strength of mine, I don't know if I'd call it a competitive advantage, is that I'm not afraid to make mistakes speaking French. And if you're learning a new language and you're afraid to make mistakes, that's going to be a problem, because in order to learn a new language, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to probably make quite a few mistakes. And if that bothers you and you're not able to do that, then you're going to struggle to learn a foreign language. So that could be a competitive advantage. But the point I'm making here is that when you recognize what your competitive advantage is, and you look at the things that you are working toward, the goals you set for yourself and what you want to achieve in life, then you can start to say, oh, well, I want to do this thing over here. And oftentimes when we start something new or we're working to make a big change or transformation, a lot of times we look at the things we're not good at and how that's going to hold us back. But when we put into the spotlight what we are good at, and how that can help us, then we start to get a boost of confidence. And those things that maybe we aren't so good at, or maybe we aren't sure of, or maybe those uncertainties that surround that life change kind of fade a little bit, and you can move forward with more confidence. Okay? So number 3 in determining what your competitive advantage is or are, because you may have more than one. I have started to develop several. The third thing that will help you to uncover your competitive advantage is you can survey your friends, your family, your colleagues, and ask them 2 questions. What am I good at? What do you see me being good at? And what would you hire me to do to help you with? And you might be surprised at what they say. I did this 2 times in my life. The first time was when I was going through coach training. And that was an assignment. We had one weekend that we had training. And I called a couple of friends and asked them, what am I good at? What is it that if you needed help with, that you would pay me for? And people said that I was a good listener. People said that I was organized, that I had a level head. And those were things that I knew about myself, but didn't recognize that it was something that stood out to them. Because a lot of times our competitive advantage is something we can't see because it's fairly innate. It's something that comes naturally to us. And we oftentimes think everybody else has this same ability, and they actually don't. And so for me, moving abroad, having that those project management skills, that was something that I just thought, it's just normal for me. I hadn't highlighted that and saying, this move abroad is hard, but it's not as hard as it might be for somebody else who doesn't know where to start, is filled with uncertainties, and is afraid or isn't sure of how to even get started. Okay. So reaching out to friends and family, asking them those 2 questions can give you a lot of information that maybe you knew, but didn't realize was something that might be considered a competitive advantage, something that other people don't actually have. The 4th thing that you can do to uncover an advantage that you might have over others is to get quiet. Meditation is a wonderful way to get in touch with your intuition. And intuition is our internal compass, and it gets a bad rap. Being rational, thinking through things, weighing out the pros and cons is always the first thing that most people turn to when they are trying to make a decision or make a change in their life. But if we can get quiet and listen to and hear or feel our intuition might guide us down a path that we need to go down, and might even point out a competitive advantage that can help you to go down that road. Now, for me, all of my life, I was a logical person. I always relied on a plan. Okay, I'm going to do this thing, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then I'm going to reach my goal. The thing is, it never was a straight line like that. There was always something that happened that took me off course. And oftentimes that logical route wasn't the route that felt right to me. In my gut, it was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And logically it makes sense. But really, I feel like I want to do this other thing that there isn't this clear path, this clear logical path. And so I would go down the logical path and then stumble. But I am living in France because I started to listen to my intuition. In 2015, I had this irrational desire to live in France and learn to speak the French language for no reason at all. It just popped up out of nowhere. And it was so strong that I had to follow it. So now I'm living in France, and I now have a new competitive advantage. That competitive advantage is that I'm living in a foreign country. I made a move abroad later in life, and people see me and see what I'm doing, and that gives me authority in this space. Had I still been living in Richmond, Virginia, I couldn't have stood up a business to help people move to France or any other foreign country for that matter. I now have a competitive advantage because I listened to and followed my intuition. All right. So getting quiet, listening to your intuition, taking steps to do things that might not feel logical, but might feel right, can help you to explore what might become a competitive advantage. So the fifth way that you can determine what your competitive advantage is and how you can leverage it, or how it is, in fact, a competitive advantage, is by hiring a mentor or a coach. Now, just this week, I had a coaching call with a client who is moving to Europe, and she is retiring early because she believed that the work that she did, which she is passionate about, would not translate into an entrepreneurial business. And so she was set on retiring early. But in our conversation just this week, I think we found her competitive advantage and how she can parlay that into a consulting business. Now, she is passionate about what she does, as I said. She's a sleep tech. And the only reason that she's retiring early is because she works overnight, and it is hard to continue to work overnight. And so after years and years of doing this, she decided that she's ready to not work overnight, even though she loves what she does. And so she's moving to Europe, and she was talking about how in Europe, it's a burgeoning field, being a sleep technician, and there are not many people who can educate people on becoming a sleep technician. But that she absolutely loves it. And in the work that she's done, she has trained others to become a sleep tech. And so we spoke about it, and voila, she's passionate about the work she does. She has the ability to communicate and train and teach well. And there is a dearth of trainers in Europe. And here she is moving to Europe with these skills and abilities. Now, it's true that a lot of countries in Europe don't speak English, but it's also true that a lot of conferences and a lot of businesses do have people who do speak English, who do understand English. And so there is a high possibility that she could teach at conferences, speak at conferences, train in English until she gets the language of her new country up to speed. So she has found her competitive advantage. The passion she has for the sleep technician industry, her ability to train, educate, and teach on this skill, right? And going to a place where there aren't a lot of people who do what she does or knows what she knows. So I work with people who are moving abroad, and oftentimes they want to start a business, but they're not really sure if what they're thinking about is sound, if there is a competitive advantage there. Maybe they are not even thinking in those terms, but I help people figure that out as well. All right. So those are 5 ways that you can uncover what your competitive advantage is, your personal competitive advantage or your entrepreneurial competitive advantage is, and how you can leverage that. Which one of these is the most interesting to you? Let me know in the comments. Now, if you are looking to make a big life change, like making a move abroad, and if you are feeling uncertain and you feel like it would be advantageous to have somebody like me who is able to help with the mindset piece of your move abroad or your life change, as well as the practical piece of putting a plan in place and or determining what your competitive advantage is so you can leverage that and make this transition more smoothly, then let's have a conversation. Go to thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat And there you can schedule a complimentary discovery call where we can talk about what your change is and where you are in the process, what you're struggling with, and how you and I might be able to work together so that you can get to where you want to go more quickly and with more ease. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description. Be sure to click on that, schedule your time with me, and I so look forward to our conversation. Now that is all I have for you today. If you have not yet watched that video where I talk about the 5 takeaways that I gained from going to that project management conference in Antibes, you can check that out here. And I will see you again next time. Bye for now.